Welcome to the Mile High Fight Show, where we break down the latest in the fighting world. Today, we'll go over UFC 276 and see just what we have waiting for us come July 2nd. So, obviously, this card is highly anticipated. I think a lot of people view this almost as like the biggest card of the year, which I think is pretty fair when you start going through the names. And I guess with that, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. And we'll start with the headliner, as always, our main event, a middleweight title bout between Israel Adesanya and Jared Cannonier. So Israel Adesanya looks to continue his two-win streak after taking his first UFC loss versus Jan Blachowicz in March of 2022 or 2021 rather, going up against Jared Cannonier, getting his first title shot after winning 5 of his last 6 with dominating power in his hands. And yeah, I mean, two really interesting fighters. I really like Israel Adesanya. I'm a fan of his. I like his style, and he's very shifty. He moves around a lot. He dodges a lot of hits. I think it's going to be an interesting one between him and Jared because you have that power on one side and then kind of the precision on the other almost. And so, Jared has the power to end it whenever he wants, but is he going to be able to? I think that's been the question for a lot of people that have faced Israel is like, he's just elusive as hell, and he's got a little bit of a chin on him too. He's gotten hit, and it's not easy to just take him down. So it's going to be a really fun one for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I love Israel Adesanya. I absolutely I've been a fan of the last Stylebender since he came into the UFC. I've literally watched every single one of his fights since his UFC debut. I saw him, as a, prospect, and I saw him as a challenger and then a title challenger. I saw the interim fight between him and Kevin Gastelum. That was an instant classic, and yeah, I mean, Izzy's got a chin, dude. Excuse me. He's beaten, just guys after guys. Obviously, I think him losing to Jan Blachowicz was a good thing, not necessarily for his record, but for himself, because I really do think Israel Adesanya was able to see some of his limitations. I thought him going up to 205 was a little risky. I think Jan, like if Jan really wanted to, I'm sure he could fight heavyweight. And he's just so big for 205 in general. Jan is just a big man, and I think Izzy was able to kind of see what he can and can't do in regards to his fighting career, and that's okay. Like ultimately, he was undefeated before he fought Jan, and he knocked out Robert Whitaker. He's beat Robert Whitaker in decision after that, and he was able to beat Marvin Vettori. And really, I mean, he's almost overlapped this division. After, and my prediction is that Izzy will get past Jared Cannonier. After he beats Cannonier, then honestly, he really doesn't have anyone else in this division that we're really concerned, that I'm overly concerned with as far as him needing to fight next. I mean, he probably will have to fight Alex Pereira, who's another guy that's on this card as well, eventually. But I mean, I really do think that Israel Adesanya has the style that can keep Jared Cannonier at bay. Cannonier. That's the thing is, I just think Izzy has more ways to win than Cannonier does, to put it lightly. I think that Cannonier is probably going to watch a lot of the Jan Blachowicz tape, try to take him down, try to use some wrestling, try to use some ground and pound. But I just think for a 185er, Izzy has a distinct advantage over some of the other 85ers. I think why Jan had so much success with getting him down was because he was so much bigger than Izzy. I do think that Cannonier is big, and Cannonier has fought at heavyweight before, but I don't think that he has the wrestling prowess or the sheer size that Jan had to take Izzy down and continually get him down, continually hold him down, continually get him down. And so, yeah, and I've seen Cannonier fight, and there's just times where I do think towards the later rounds, he just gets a little tired. He has a lot of muscle on his frame, and more muscle, more oxygen consumption, in a 5-round fight, like against someone like Israel Adesanya, where he's so lean and so used to going to the distance and he's just so accurate with his punches and his strikes and his kicks that it's just so hard to get in on him. I used to think that Robert Whitaker had the most beautiful footwork, the way he bounces on his toes and his heels to slide in and out of distance to get him with striking range. And I used to think that Robert Whitaker had just undeniable an undeniable advantage when it came to his striking because of his footwork. And Israel Adesanya has figured that out thoroughly. Robert Whitaker cannot get in on him at all. And that's why I think that, when Whitaker and Adesanya eventually fight again for the third time, because Whitaker's so good that he'll get back up to the title fight again, Adesanya is going to win again, just because I think Izzy's so good at being able to see someone's strengths and figure out how he can make the fight his own. And I think Cannonier is going to have a hard time getting within Izzy's range, and I think Cannonier is going to have a hard time making the fight his type of fight. I think Cannonier would have to make this just a real dog fight, get him real close, elbows, Muay Thai clinches. Just he would have to make the fight really, really nasty, and Izzy's so good at avoiding that. So yeah, I'm still predicting that Izzy's going to figure this out, and he's going to continue to be the UFC middleweight champion of the world. I don't see how Israel Adesanya loses right now. And no offense to Jared Cannonier, because he has been phenomenal his last few fights. I don't see how it happens against Izzy.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I mean, I think really the only chance he has is if he can just sneak a super powerful strike in there and get him in a hit. But like you said, he's so good at avoiding that. And if Jared can't keep the sustained pressure or end it early, I think it pretty much ends itself there. But it is going to be a really exciting one either way for the main event there. And then our co-main event, a featherweight title bout between Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. And this is the third fight, a trilogy for these guys, a greatly anticipated. Alexander Volkanovski, one of the premier names in the UFC, coming off his thorough annihilation of the Korean Zombie, against Max Holloway, looking to take the belt from him after cruising his way through the featherweight division, only to face a brick wall against Volk in fight one of that trilogy. And then in the second one, make it a hotly contested split decision that many thought should have gone to him, should have gone to Max. So, obviously you get this third fight, kind of the final decider. If Volk puts it away, you're probably like, okay, fine. But I think that second fight left just enough doubt, just enough that I think this is necessary. And I'm never going to complain about seeing Volk fight. I'm never going to complain about seeing Max Holloway fight. And I'm certainly never going to complain about the two of them fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my more anticipated fights of the year. Obviously, I'm a huge Max Holloway fan. And I am a big Alexander Volkanovski fan. I cannot deny that. But Max Holloway has just been one of my favorite fighters since I've started watching the UFC all those years ago. But I mean, I remember both these guys, just both of them coming up, especially Alexander Volkanovski. When I met Max was getting ready to fight Jose Aldo for the second time. So Max was already interim champion. He had already just beat Anthony Pettis, so Max was an interim champion already, getting ready to fight Jose Aldo for the second time in Detroit. Max went and put away Jose Aldo to become the undisputed featherweight champion of the world. And at that time, Jose Aldo was considered the GOAT of the featherweight division. And Holloway went, beat him twice, and was on a streak until he met Alexander Volkanovski. It seemed like in that first fight, Volkanovski had a slight advantage as far as, I would say, leg kicks, and he was able to get takedowns a little bit more. But that second fight, and I try to be as unbiased as possible, but there's got to be a little bit of that biased opinion, even if you're trying your best not to. Um, I really do think in my heart of hearts that Max Holloway won that second fight. And I think that in this fight, I'm very much hoping that Max will be able to get that featherweight strap back. I think he's a very deserving number one contender. Every single time Max has lost against Volk, he's went and fought top tier guys and put them away in dominating fashion. I mean, the beating he put on Calvin Kattar is still to this day one of my favorite fights to watch, just
Yeah.
because it's a thorough ass beating of a top contender. We just watched Calvin Kattar fight, last weekend, and he looked really good against Josh Emmett. He looked really good in his fight before then, but yeah, Max Holloway made him look like a rookie. There's a very viral clip of Calvin Kattar throwing punches and Max Holloway slipping them, and he's pounding on his chest saying that he's the best boxer in the UFC. So it just gives me goosebumps every single time, and I think that Max is going to really bring that same edge into this fight with Volk. But the one thing I'll say about Alexander Volkanovski is he truly is the embodiment of a champion. Like, he takes his job very seriously. He takes being a champion very seriously. He takes it very personal in regards to, this is how he feeds his family. And, although both men have families, Max just got married. And, Max has a son, obviously. But, Volkanovski talks about his family very much being a drawing point of inspiration for him. So I root for Volk in that sense. I root for Volk because he's a great guy. I really hope that Max can figure out, because otherwise, I think for Max, if he loses this fight, I do think you have to maybe thinking about putting on some weight permanently and moving up to 155. Or if you're Volk, maybe you've cleaned out the division and maybe you can leave it to Max. If Max feels like he can still make 145 easy and he still feels like he can, because I think there's more interesting fights for Max if he becomes a champion again than there is for Volkanovski. I think if Volkanovski, once he beats Max, I don't think there's really anyone in the division that could beat him. And I don't think that people are going to have a better chance to beat Max. I think that there's just guys that Max hasn't fought yet that Volk has, so I think that, I don't know. I guess I just, depending on who wins is going to be who I think should, if Volk wins, Volk should move up. If Max wins, Max should stay put. But if Max loses, then maybe Max should move up. So I don't know. I just know that I'm excited for the trilogy in one of the most, just as far as like pure skill wise, this is the most entertaining rivalry ever. Just because I really do think that both these guys are almost dead even with each other. I think that they have had two very close fights, and I'm expecting a very close third one. But I'm hoping that Max Holloway, can pull out, and the Blessed Express can be dominant again. So yeah, I'm stoked about Max.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be a fantastic fight. And, to your point, in a lot of the interviews for this fight, or coming into this fight, Volkanovski appears to be kind of looking ahead, which, I feel bad for Max when you look at that. But, I mean, it's expected from, that's kind of the mentality you got to have as a champion, as a fighter. Like, you're, you know, expecting yourself to win almost, but he's almost kind of like, when I win this, he says that he plans to move up to lightweight and he wants to be a double champion. Like, just legacy wise, that's his goal. That's what he wants to do. And so, he's already kind of like looking ahead. I guess the question is can Max spoil his plans? So, all right, and then our next fight on the card here, a middleweight bout between Sean Strickland and Alex Pereira. Strickland coming off winning 6 in a row, moving his way up the middleweight rankings, looking for a title shot, and he will face Alex Pereira in only his third UFC fight after going 2-0 thus far, as well as putting together 2 kickboxing wins against Israel Adesanya, who he shares the card with tonight, as Enrique mentioned earlier. So those two have some history, and potentially later on could end up in a championship title shot for Alex Pereira.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that there's a good chance that Alex Pereira could be getting a title shot. If I'm being honest with you, much sooner than I think he deserves one. Nothing against Alex Pereira. I think he's been very entertaining since he's been in the UFC. He had an amazing flying knee knockout. His last fight was very entertaining. I think the reason why they gave Alex Pereira Sean Strickland is to set up Izzy versus Pereira. So I think ultimately the thought of them fighting in the UFC was very entertaining for Dana. They've already fought twice in kickboxing, and I think you'll be able to sell that fight a little bit. So to get Pereira closer to the title fight, you have to have him fight a contender. He has to fight Sean Strickland because Sean Strickland's the one that's open and that accepted the fight with Pereira. Now, I don't know how this fight's going to go, truthfully. Sean Strickland is a bad man, and I do truly believe that he is a very talented fighter. He's also fucking crazy. Like, Sean Strickland is actually a crazy man. And I think that he very much welcomes this fight. I think that he very much eyes the opportunity to put himself past Pereira and, shoot for a title shot himself. I think that Sean Strickland's, a fight or two away. If he beats Alex Pereira, not only does he stop the hype train, but then, I don't know, maybe after that, maybe you fight Jared Cannonier, for like the opportunity to get past whoever, or maybe Sean Strickland fights the winner of Marvin Vettori and Robert Whitaker next. And then he fights Izzy. I think that if Sean Strickland's able to get past Pereira, I think he needs to fight one more guy in the top 5. And then I'm very fine with Sean Strickland getting a title shot. I don't necessarily know how he'd do against Izzy, but I think for both these guys, you need another fight after this. I think if you're Pereira, you might even be able to get a title shot if you win this fight with a devastating knockout. If you're able to knock out Sean Strickland, just highlight reel, you could probably get a title shot with that. Just because Izzy doesn't have anyone to fight after Cannonier. So I think it's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting fight, and just another one to add to this stacked card, So I think that ultimately, like, what we're going to have to do is see what happens with Pereira, see what happens with Sean Strickland, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll definitely be a fun one, and both those guys have stakes to lose here. I mean, when it comes to Alex Pereira, I think he's going to get his shot either way eventually. It's certainly going to put him off track if he does lose this to Strickland. But yeah, I mean, both these guys are hungry and looking for a shot. So this one's going to be important to them, and I'm really interested to see it. And then our next fight, or would have been our next fight here, but was unfortunately canceled. A women's flyweight bout between Lauren Murphy versus Misha Tate. I know we were both looking forward to this one. And Lauren Murphy unfortunately had to pull from the fight for undisclosed circumstances. So hope everything's okay with her. But yeah, I mean, sucks to see that fight gone. At this point, we don't know if there's going to be a fight added or if it's just going to be the 4 that are left on that main card. So we'll just have to see in the coming days if there's a fight added there. Maybe one gets moved up from the prelim. We'll have to see. But for the presumed last fight at this point on the main card, it'll be a bantamweight bout between Pedro Munoz and Sean O'Malley. Very exciting one here. So an up and coming fan favorite fighter, Sugar Sean O'Malley, will fight his toughest opponent yet in Pedro Munoz, who's ranked number 10 in the division and coming off an unfortunate 1-4 record in his last 5 fights. But all of those losses came against stiff competition, and Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, Dominic Cruz, and the current bantamweight champ Aljamain Sterling. Uh, and so, one of those things where like you're facing such high competition. Yes, you were 1-4, but it was all against. I think all four of those guys are former champions.
Yeah.
So like you can't blame them too much, and certainly much higher competition for O'Malley. So though O'Malley has done a lot of talking and views himself as one of the rising stars in the UFC, the time has come for him to prove it after winning 7 of his last 8 against primarily lower competition, a lot of unranked guys.
Yeah, and this is a huge fight for both these guys. For Pedro Munoz, I mean, like you said, 1-4 in his last 5 fights, but all of them coming against former champions and just the elite of fighters. And so you don't really take too much shine off of Pedro Munoz because he does take everyone and anyone, and he does put up a pretty decent fight with everyone he fights. I mean, I think for Sean O'Malley, this is his second true test. And if I'm being honest with you, this is a really important fight for Sean O'Malley. Not only just to prove that he does belong in the top 10, because obviously Pedro Munoz is ranked number 10, but this is going to show that, in my opinion, he got lucky when he hurt himself against Cheeto. And I'm a big Sean O'Malley fan, but I really do think that Cheeto Vera is I think Cheeto's like championship material. I think Cheeto's going to be very, very hard to deal with as he continues to fight. Cheeto Vera fights Dominic Cruz next, so I think that's going to show us something as well. And I believe that fight happens in September or August, so it's coming up relatively soon. But Sean O'Malley obviously got hurt in the fight against Cheeto Vera, and so we weren't able to truly see Sean O'Malley's potential in regards to higher competition. So this is his first time, and God forbid that O'Malley gets hurt again to make the fight not happen, or to make it end in a no contest or a loss, or just without a true fight. This is his first time he's having to do that, and so I think Pedro Munoz is a perfect guy for that. I think Munoz walks forward, and I think that honestly, you could kind of look at this fight as a mini Cannonier Izzy fight. Sean O'Malley's big for that division. He's tall and lanky for that division, where Pedro Munoz fits that division's mold a little bit more true as far as a shorter guy at the lighter weight division. Bantamweight being 135. I think Sean O'Malley could kind of stay back, piece him up a little bit, throw some kicks, throw some real lengthy jabs, and keep him at bay. And I think for Pedro Munoz, you're going to want to try to get in at close boxing range, make it a dirty fight as best he can, and rely on that power, because that's one thing that Pedro Munoz has, is he does have power that Sean O'Malley does have to respect. And I'll tell you right now, although I'm picking Sean O'Malley to win this fight and I'll be rooting for Sean, I can see a world where Sean gets a little reckless and Pedro catches him. I can see that, because Pedro really does have power for the division. And Sean O'Malley does really need to respect that. But ultimately, like I said, I do see Sean O'Malley pulling this out. He is a fan favorite, so all eyes are going to be on him. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm so excited for him to open up the card, if he does end up opening the card. I think they'll probably move another fight to the main card, especially with my girl Misha Tagan canceled. But yeah, I'm excited for Sean O'Malley. I'm excited for Pedro Munoz. I'm excited to see this is like my favorite type of fight, because this is like the young up and coming star versus the guy that's fighting for his career almost. You go 1-5, and honestly, even though he's a talented fighter, Pedro Munoz could get dropped, or he could fall out of he will fall out of the top 10. And with a very stacked division like bantamweight, it's hard to get back up there, and if you lose to O'Malley, it's going to be hard to get a rematch with him. So Pedro Munoz has to be careful in this fight. Sean O'Malley also has to be careful. I see Sean taking it. I see a decision, and I see Sean O'Malley winning by majority decision in this fight. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be a good one, and hopefully we'll just get a good fight regardless of what happens.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, you hope that it's just going to be an entertaining fight. And for Sean O'Malley, I would tend to agree that I think I would pick him to win, and I think he can win this. But it's going to be a test for him because, like we mentioned, this is the best competition he's ever faced. Pedro's got that power to take him out. And I think that this is going to be like a point in his career where because at this point, in my opinion, you know, I look at Sean O'Malley as, yes, a fan favorite. Yes, a lot of people like him. He's got an upward trajectory, but he is not. I don't view him as a like contender and as one of like the premier names of the UFC because he hasn't established himself there yet, and he's getting there. But this is going to be, like we mentioned, almost that first big test to say, are you real? Are you really, really like? He puts on the personality of a champion and a personality of one of those. He talks a lot about like Conor McGregor and being a personality in the UFC. So that's kind of the image he's going for. And this is going to be that first big test to say, are you really that, or are you putting up a show? So we'll have to see, come July 2nd. And yeah, we'll have to see if another fight gets added to the main card. But, we could talk about a couple of these prelims. My featured prelim that I'm most excited for is going to be Jim Miller versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone, if it actually happens. Last couple of fights for Cowboy have been expected to be his last fight. However, I think it's been his last two that have been pushed back for one reason or another. And so, we'll have to see if this one actually happens or not. But if it does, it could be the last fight of a legendary fighter. Uh, so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a great I think that's a great prelim to pick. Obviously, I'm a huge Cowboy fan, and I'm hoping Cowboy's able to come back, and especially a fight against Jim Miller. Like Jim Miller and Cowboy Cerrone are gonna throw motherfucking hands, dog. Like they're not gonna come in there and do anything besides try to kill each other. Especially Cowboy, and I think Cowboy said he's gonna fight two more, so he's got this fight, and he'll take one more fight, maybe like the Joe Lozon fight. That's Tony Ferguson versus Khabib at this point, or whatever Cowboy does. I think he said he still got two more fights, so we'll get this one against Jim Miller, and hopefully it's a scrap of a lifetime. And then hopefully we get one more fight with Cowboy Cerrone, but if not, it'll definitely be the end of a legendary career. And I mean, honestly, Jim Miller's up there too. So, honestly, at either point, we could get either of these guys retiring with this next fight. But my prelim of the night is going to be the Macy Barber fight. Let me see who she's fighting actually. She is fighting on the early prelims, and she is fighting Jessica I. So I'm really excited to see that fight. I'm obviously hoping that Macy Barber comes out on top. Macy Barber is a young and up and coming woman fighter. She, her nickname is the Future, and I really do think that she has tons of potential in this weight class. I think she has tons of potential to become a future title contender. She fights at strawweight, which is 115. That's in the same weight division as Thug Rose. And Macy Barber's fighting style is more of a boxing approach, which is really refreshing, especially for girls in the lighter weight class. She just comes in and throws hands every single time, dude, and it's just so entertaining, so fun. And she's really, really young. I believe she's maybe 22, 23 years old. Been fighting the UFC the last couple of years, and yeah, I always tune in when Macy Barber fights, so I'll definitely be tuning in for her fight on the early prelims. But I mean, there's just so many good ones, dude. Like, I can't complain at all.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you look at the other, prelim cards there, not the early prelims, but just the main prelim. We have a lightweight bout between Brad Riddell and Jalen Turner. a welterweight bout between Robbie Lawler and Barberena rather, and then a welterweight bout between Ian Gary and Gabe Green. So some solid fights there, some stuff to look forward to. And I mean, obviously when you look at the card as a whole, unfortunate that we aren't getting Lauren Murphy versus Misha Tate. But I think the rest of the card is still quality enough that it's going to be more than enough to fill our appetite uh, for some good fights. So, hell yeah. I am really looking forward to this one, Enrique. Can't wait to watch it with you, as always. And then, got a shout out just at the end of the show here as we're recording. We're a show based in Colorado. So, obviously, we got a shout out to Colorado Avalanche, who just now won Game 6 of the Stanley Cup final, which won the entire series for them. So, yeah, good for them. It's going to be super fun to see the city of Denver blow up in joy. And we could already hear the fireworks outside and people celebrating. So good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super stoked that I get to watch another beautiful fight card with you. Can't wait for this one. This one's stacked. Shout out to the Avs. Even though I said I wasn't gonna root for you guys, I'm gonna be an Avs fan tonight. I'm gonna be an Avs fan tomorrow, and then I don't know. I'll pick a hockey team before next year, so we'll figure it out. But yeah, go Avs. Happy for the city. Happy for you. Happy for my dad. Yeah, happy for all the Avs fan.
Hell yeah, good stuff. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you guys so much for listening. This has been the Mile High Fight Show, and we'll see you guys next week.